Hey everybody, this is Helena Hart. Welcome back to my Master Your Magnetism podcast. I'm here with Matthew Coast again today, my very good friend and fellow coach. Welcome, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me here, Helena.
We always have so much fun. We're actually streaming this episode live on YouTube. So if you're listening to this on my podcast on Spotify or Apple or anywhere else and you'd like to see a video of this episode, I'll include that in the show notes. I'll also include a link to Matthew's brand new program on sale right now, so incredibly inexpensive, on texting. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about what to text a guy you like. And is there anything you want to say to introduce this topic while we're waiting for some people to join us live?
Sure. So if you are, let's say you just started talking to a guy, or maybe you've been talking to him and either you've met up with him or maybe you've never met him before. What do you text him to kind of get his interest, get him desiring you, get him interested in you a lot more, build that connection? How do you do that? What do you do that? That's what we're going to be talking about today.
That sounds amazing. I know we did another live stream a few weeks ago on flirting secrets that make a man desire you. And I got so many requests for a whole live stream on texting. And I see some people joining live already. Hi to Michelle and Shauna. Thank you so much. For everyone watching live, say hi in the chat. Let us know if you have any questions about this topic, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. So are we ready to dive into that first texting secret, Matt?
Let's dive in. Yeah. Absolutely.
Sounds good.
So let's talk about number one. The first thing that you want to do is don't be afraid to reach out sometimes. There's a myth out there that if you send him a text message first, if you ever reach out first, that means you're chasing him and you never want to do that. And that's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. Helena, you talked to Tom, right? When you first met Tom over Bumble, and you were the first one to message him, right?
Yeah, that's the way the app is set up. And I get questions all the time like, well, isn't that masculine that you had to be the one to send the first message? And my answer is always no. And I'd love to hear more from you on your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah. So I met my fiance on Tinder, and she was actually the first person to message me as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so, like, here's what I want you to think about it in your mind. Like, think about this as it's not really that big of a deal. It's an invitation to talk, right? You're creating an invitation to talk. And, it's like in a game of football or something, you're like giving him the ball, right? And seeing if he takes it and runs with it. And if he doesn't, that shows you a lot. And if he does, that also shows you a lot. And so it's not a big deal, especially if he ends up taking the ball and he runs with it. And in this case, what that would mean is that he starts talking to you. He starts conversing with you. He, moves things forward. His energy is moving towards you. If that's happening, it's absolutely not a big deal for you to reach out to him first. It's really not a big deal at all. And in fact, you don't even need, especially as a woman, but just in general, if a guy likes you, if he's attracted to you, if he's interested in you, you don't have to say much, right? Like if you go onto Bumble and look at a guy's profile who's, matched with a bunch of women, the women always have to message first. Well, the number one message that women send to a guy first is some variation of hi or hey. Mm-hmm. That's it, right? Every once in a while, he'll get a question or whatever, but it doesn't need to be much, especially if he likes you. He's going to want to converse with you. There's actually a fun one. Let me give you a text message real quick that's kind of fun to do when things have kind of died down and maybe you guys aren't talking as much. Send him like an animal noise, right? So like meow is a really good one, MEOW, meow, right? Or woof. Right. And it's a cute kind of playful way to be like, hey, I'm interested in talking to you. And then if he's funny and flirty, what he'll do is send you something back like another meow or another woof or, some other animal sound like moo or something like that. Right. And then you're just having this fun. All you're doing is you're saying, here's a message, here's an invitation to start a conversation with me. Are you going to do it? And then because that's all that you're doing right there is just saying, hey, let's have a conversation. And if he wants to do that, then he will join in on the conversation. Then you'll be talking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I always say it's all about where you're coming from, right? So if you're coming from a place where you're really attached to the outcome and this is the guy you really like, and so I hope he texts me back, and you're sitting there waiting, staring at your phone, if that's the energy behind it, then obviously you're not coming from a feminine place. But if you're messaging a bunch of people online, or you text a guy and then you kind of forget about it and you go about your day, that it's totally fine to do that. I see people in the chat saying I've reached out before. Someone else says a guy can be okay if a girl is the one making the move. There has to be a level of maturity from the masculine side. Otherwise, it doesn't look okay. So thank you so much for your comments, everybody. I think it's so important to really get a deeper understanding of this, where a lot of people think that masculine energy means leaning forward, feminine energy means leaning back. And that's just kind of a very basic understanding of it. There's so much more that goes into that. And it's all about your mindset and where you're coming from, don't you think?
Yeah, and in fact, kind of touching on that, I know that's kind of, we're going in a different direction here, but really a lot of these things that people, even like me, I might tell you to do something, right? And you're like, oh, I did that and I'm feeling more feminine, so that must be a feminine thing. Leaning back is a feminine thing. Well, it's not necessarily a feminine thing, but these actions, right? Because feminine energy is an energy. It's an energy inside of you. It's how you're feeling. It's your state and your well-being, where you're coming from. And so these actions can sometimes trigger you to be in your feminine, but they aren't necessarily feminine actions in and of themselves, right? And so, there's a lot of confusion around it, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you 100% on that one.
Yeah. I love being able to clear that up. It's not that leaning forward is always masculine. You can be leaning back and be coming from a very masculine place if you're being strategic and trying to make a guy chase you. So you're playing games and ignoring him on purpose and things like that. So again, it's all about where you're coming from. I'd love to hear the next thing you have to say on this topic, Matt.
Okay, so the next one is to use questions, right? So you're starting to talk to this guy, and the best thing that you can do, because sometimes you'll say something, right? And I know we were just talking about like starting a conversation, but you start a conversation, you say, hey, he says, hey, where do you go next, right? You meow, he meows back to you, right? What happens, right? And the best way, a lot of times women get caught up because maybe with their friends or something, they'll say something, it's just a statement, and the person responds back. But like with a guy, that might not end up happening. And sometimes guys don't know what to say, right? And so it's easier if you ask him a question, because it creates this desire for him to engage with you and to give you an answer. Right. And so using questions is really, really powerful. And, you can either use yes or no questions, but if you use yes or no questions, you might just get a yes or no answer. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you use questions where with an open end, then there's more for him to say to that. So for instance, if you say, do you like traveling? Right. He might say yes or no. Right. And if that's all he says, it's like, oh, okay, so, where's your favorite place that you've been? Or, what's the craziest trip you've ever taken? Or something like that. Right. And suddenly it's this, conversation that you're having that's opening things up, because it's a direction that's going this way or that way or whatever different direction. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And another tip on this is to be specific. So let's say that he's into sports. What you might want to do is ask him like, hey, so do you think, like if you could choose one sports team that you think is just going to crush it this year, like who would that be? Right. Or let's say that he's into movies or a TV show or something like that. You can ask him like, who's your favorite character in that show or whatever. Right. Like, could you live somewhere in that fantasy where, like, if you could live somewhere in that fantasy world, where would it be? So, something like that, right? Something specific and tangible, because you're going into his interests. You're talking to him about things that he's interested in. And everybody loves talking about things that they're interested in, right? And so it'll open up the conversation, allow him to talk more and converse more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's great, because if you ask a yes, no question, they say yes. Now you're having to come up with a follow-up question. It's kind of like you're leading the conversation now. You're like the interviewer or the reporter, and you don't want to get into that dynamic, right? And so I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
So number 3, you want to talk about number 3? Okay, so number 3 is my suggestion is that you move from text messaging to actually interacting in real life. I get a lot of women that they want to like spend all their time like texting back and forth and build an entire relationship with him. It's better for you to start connecting with him with your voice, with your visual, right? And so my suggestion, especially if you are first talking to this guy and you haven't met with him yet, or even if you have met with him but you can't meet with him for a while or something or whatever, do a video chat, right? Get on a video chat with him and have a conversation with him. I've had a woman that came to me a while back, and she was like, she was texting with this guy forever, and then when she ended up meeting up with him, it was like a totally different person when she met up. And so and she was turned off by that. And I hear this story from so many women that try to build relationships over text message. So move it to the next medium, move it somewhere else, and if you haven't met a guy, it can be better from a safety standpoint. It can be better from a connection standpoint. It can be better from like, do we actually get along, right? Can we have a basic conversation over video chat? You can save yourself a ton of time of getting all dolled up and, going out and, meeting some guy who might not even show up, who, is weird or awkward or, creepy or something when you actually meet him, and just do that over video chat. And it works way, way, way better. Right. And you can do this a few different ways. One way you can do it is just say, hey, I'd love to hear your voice. What do you think about a phone call? Or, I miss hearing your voice. Let's say you've talked to him before, like, hey, I miss hearing your voice. What do you think of a phone call? Or you can reframe it as something like a pre-date and be like, hey, what do you think of us doing like a virtual coffee date or something like that? Whatever you like kind of works for you the best, I suggest that you do that. And worst case scenario, you can just do voice messages. Voice messages work as well because you're building up this connection where you're talking to each other. Like your voice as a woman is incredibly interesting and connecting to a guy when he gets to hear it. Right. And so if you can start voice chatting back and forth, you'll actually build a connection just through this voice chat instead of just doing this text message, which, can be very confusing for a lot of people.
I love what you said. It's so important to move things into real life quickly, in my opinion, because just like you said, a lot of times you get in person and it's a totally different kind of person than it's someone who was just texting and kind of comfortable behind a screen and being sort of anonymous. Another thing I hear all the time is women put so much emphasis on the texting or the messaging, and then they say things like, I've been talking to a guy for 8 months, or I've been texting a guy for the last 3-4 months, and the guy just pulls away or disappears. And they say things like, how could he just drop me? We were talking every day. He sent me a good morning and good night text every day. But I don't think men build up a connection the way some women do when it comes to just texting. That's why it's important to not get invested in someone and put so much meaning on what he's texting, what time he's texting. It's all about meeting up in person often, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want my suggestion on this, one is do not take a guy seriously. Don't take any men seriously until they've proven themselves as somebody that you should be taking seriously. And the way that he proves himself is by taking you out on dates, is by meeting up with you in person, is by showing up consistently, is by showing that he's interested in the same kind of relationship that you're interested in, right? This is him proving himself. Him talking to you over Messenger for months is not him proving himself, right? One of the things you have to remember is that a lot of people on these dating apps aren't even real people, right? Or they actually did studies on this, and they found that most people on dating apps aren't even single, right? Believe it or not. They're either married, they're in relationships. We had a woman in our community a couple of years ago who admitted this to our entire community, where she was like, yeah, I'm, married, but I like talk to these guys on dating apps because I'm just, I want to I love that feeling of talking and flirting with a new guy and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, guys are doing that as well. A lot of guys are out there and they're not even trying to actually meet up with you because they're married, they're in a relationship, they're not even the actual person that they're pretending they are on the dating app. And so all they really want is a pen pal, and to feel that feeling that they're not getting from their relationship or, regularly in their life. And they're using you to do that. And so I suggest you stop allowing them to use you like that, and instead make it so that he has to take you out on dates and meet up with you in order to prove himself worthy of the amazing, wonderful woman that you are, and show you that he's actually serious about getting into a relationship with you. Remember, you're not looking for a pen pal. You are looking for the love of your life. And if you let these guys that are just going to waste your time, it's going to stop you from opening yourself up and allowing yourself to receive the man who's out there looking for you.
It's so true. So if you do what Matt suggested and you suggest a phone call or video chat or meeting up sometime, and a guy backs away from that, or he doesn't pick up the ball and run with it, that's a pretty good indication that he was a time waster. He's just looking for a text buddy. We don't even know if this guy is single or not. And so I love that take. Don't take him seriously until he proves himself as someone who you can take seriously. I think that's great.
Absolutely.
Really good. Yeah. Are we ready for the next one?
Yep. Number 4. Let's go to number 4. Maybe you were thinking about this, but we were talking about focus on the meetup. Number 4 is focus on the meetup. And so you're not, like I said, you're not looking for a pen pal. You're looking for a real person, right? And one of the best ways you can make sure that you're not getting caught up in a scam, or you're not, ending up with a pen pal, or, you're not talking to somebody who's married, never plans on meeting up with you, is making sure that you focus on meeting up with him in person. And so my suggestion is that you limit the amount of time that you're willing to talk to a guy over Messenger or text message without him meeting up with you, and meeting up with you consistently, right? And the way that you do that is by setting a boundary. And so my suggestion is between 1 and 2 weeks. 1 week is usually enough, but some women want to talk more, so 2 weeks I would say is max of talking to him over Messenger without it leading to, at the very least, doing a video call. If you do video chats, it'll make things so much better, because you'll have less guys flake on you. You'll build a better connection with them. You'll stop wasting your time with guys that aren't right for you. You can screen out a lot of guys before even meeting them by doing a video chat. But I also suggest that you meet up with him in real life, because you don't know who he is. You want to be able to smell his pheromones, and you want him to smell yours, right? Because you'll know. You get something, there's something there, right? And so that's what I suggest. And here's the way that you do this, right? So let's say you've been talking for 2 weeks, and you go, hey, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. So whenever you do a boundary, you always want to give them some kind of compliment, or tell them, something that you like about what you guys have been doing. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, but I really don't have time to sit around and just, message back and forth all day. If you want to set up a date, or maybe you can also say if you want to set up a meetup, but, it depends on the framing that you want to set with this. But if you want to set up a date, I'd be happy to make time for you. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you say, what do you think? Right. And so what you're doing here is you're just saying, basically, you are not allowed to waste any more of my time. If you want to meet up with me, I'd love it, and if you don't, I'm going to disappear on you. All right. And that's what you do, is you disappear on guys, because some guys will try to rope you back in to this conversation, and you do not get roped back in, just continually, pleasantly and, nicely remind him that you don't really have time to chat, and that if he wants to meet up, that you'll make time for him.
Right. And a guy who's truly serious is going to say, great, let's do it. A lot of guys, especially online, if they're used to being rejected over and over, which I think most guys are, if they're online dating, if they're really interested in a real in-person relationship, they'll be thrilled that that's something that you're open to. And the time wasters will, yes, fall away. And that's actually a good thing. And I actually see a question about that in the chat. She says, how to meet people with real intentions nowadays? What do you recommend? I think that's kind of what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. This methodology is something that I teach a lot of my clients about. And what you're doing here, and this isn't the entire methodology, but it's part of it. And what you're doing is you're getting rid of all the guys that are wasting your time, right? And what you're doing is you're saying, hey, if you're serious, then pursue me, right? If you're serious, let's do this. If you're serious, let's go. And all the rest of the guys, they will fall away. They will disappear. And that's exactly what you're looking for. Because there's going to be a bunch of guys that are, really hot online and, their pictures are really great and all this stuff, but they're scammers or they're not real or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. What you're not doing is letting those guys waste your time. What you're doing is you're opening yourself up, especially on get on dating apps. If my suggestion is that everybody does dating apps, right? There's a lot of people that are going to waste your time on dating apps. So you have to be diligent and you have to be smart about how you're interacting with people. And we're giving you some of those tools right now. I mean, there's other tools that you can have. I recommend, you get my program, my texting program, that'll help you out a lot, especially with flirting and, building that interest and stuff, even over text. But this will help you as well. Right? Do these things that we're talking about. This is a system that works.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get to the rest of the questions at the end, but I'm just loving this conversation, Matt. Is there anything else you want to say on this one, or should we move into number 5?
Let's move into number 5. So number 5 is just giving him room to pursue you. And so this is less of a what to do and it's more of a what not to do, but it's kind of both. And so I have a phrase that I use a lot with my clients. And, if you've watched any of my material, you've definitely heard this. And it is the magic is in the middle, right? This is where healthy things are, is in the middle ground of everything. And it's actually very normal and very common for people to jump from one side to the other. Right. So they're smothering a guy. They're, constantly trying to stay in contact. They're, pushing for things. They're the ones setting everything up and doing everything. Right. They're bombarding him with messages, even when he's not responding. And then they flip over to the other side and they're like, oh, leaning back, and then they do nothing at all. They're like, they're just waiting for the guy to do everything and they hardly respond and hardly do anything. And, both of those are extreme behaviors, right? And the healthy place, the best place, the beautiful place is in the middle, right? Relationships aren't built by one person or the other. They're built by two people coming together and building the relationship together. And so you want to give him space to come and pursue you, right? And you want to be receptive and connect with him and talk to him as he's doing that. So stay away from the extremes, stay away from doing too much, stay away from doing nothing, and then find the middle spot, right? And if you're not used to that middle spot, it can take some time. But, go for guys that are going for you. Right? Don't go for guys that are, just there's nothing there, right? Don't go for guys, and those guys can be the most attractive, right? A lot of times the guys that are the most unavailable can be the most attractive because the thing that makes us feel like we're really attracted to somebody is often the exact opposite of what makes him a good long-term relationship partner. Right. And so you want to remember that when you're talking to a guy and connecting with a guy. Right. And if you're like totally head over heels in love with a guy and you're just, you got your love drunk goggles on. You're like, oh my God, he's so amazing. Right. But he's like doing all the wrong things. Right. He's not talking to you. He's, making you do all the work. He's, doing all this stuff. Don't go for that guy. Put him on the sidelines, put him in a timeout. He can come back in when he's ready to play ball and build something together with you, right? Instead, go for guys that are interested in you and talking to you and wanting to build things up with you, and give guys a chance that you might not normally give a chance to, because on dating apps are designed to be the most superficial place of anything that you do, right? And so the most superficial things are not what makes a guy a good partner. His character does. And so you want to find out what his character is. And the only way to do that is to meet up with him and find out what he's really like, and get to see him in person and see if he's pursuing you consistently over time. Does that make sense? I'm going off on a tangent over here.
So great. I mean, I could talk forever about that too. I always say choose among the men who are choosing you, not the other way around. I've said this a million times. Everyone's probably heard me say this before, but you don't want to just decide this is the guy I like, put him on a pedestal, and then you're subtly going to try to prove yourself to him and win him over, even in very subtle ways. But men can feel that and pick up on that. It's in your energy and your vibe. And it doesn't really matter what you do if you're coming from that place. It's a big turnoff, I think. So this is really great. Hopefully that was helpful. I see some other questions coming through in the chat, but is there anything else you want to say on this last one, Matt?
No, that's it. And if you can, and you're in the chat, if you have what's worked for you as far as like texting what's your best texting advice? If you're watching this in the chat, tell us what your best texting advice is. What's worked for you? What should you avoid? Let us know.
Yes. Every time I look down, I'm looking at the comments coming through. I just can't help myself. I'm so excited to connect with everybody. This is so much fun. So I'm just scrolling all the way back to the top. Hello to everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'll do a recap of these 5 secrets in just a minute here. Nellie says, hi to both of you. Congratulations, Matt, on your engagement. Yes. Oh my gosh. I've known for so long and I have not said a word. And I know you just kind of announced it recently, right? Yeah. And so excited for you. Deb says, I liked what's the wildest adventure you've ever been on question. Thanks for that tip. I really like that one too. That was really good. Okay, we got to that question already. Here is one. I just set some boundaries with the man I was talking to. We've known each other since elementary school, went to high school together too. We reconnected less than a year ago after 25 years. We were 43 and 42 years old. He knew I wanted a serious relationship. He never said much. So I finally asked him what he wanted and he responded he didn't know. Just go with the flow and see what happens. I said, no, that doesn't work for me. He got upset and just didn't answer anymore. We'd been on about 8 physical dates already. Was I wrong for setting my boundaries and saying no? Great question, Matt. What are your thoughts on this one?
No, I don't think you're wrong for doing that at all. You've been on 8 physical dates and he doesn't have any idea. Let's say that you went on a date. Let's say you went on 2 dates a week, right? That's a month of you guys dating each other and he doesn't have any idea. He just wants to go with the flow. What he's really communicating here is that he just wants to waste your time a whole bunch more. And you're saying, hey, I'm not going to let you waste my time. Would there be more elegant ways of saying it? Maybe, but what he's telling you, what he's clearly telling you is that he wants to just waste your time and you're saying, I'm not going to. And so I think it's fine. It's not a big deal. It's like, okay, here's what you want to think about. You want to think of yourself as the CEO of your relationship Inc., right? And these guys are showing up and they are acting as job applicants, right? And you said, okay, you fit the job description. So, I'm going to give you a trial period. And you gave him 8 dates, right? As a trial period. And at the end of that trial period, you said, hey, do you want the job or not? And he's like, let's just keep giving me some money and I'll keep showing up and doing some things and we'll see what ends up happening, right? What he didn't say is, yeah, I want that job. I'm serious about this. And you're awesome, and I'd love to do this with you, right? Which is what you want to hear, right? Can it take guys some time to figure it out whether they want to be with you or not? Yeah, sure. But a month is enough time for most guys to figure out whether they want to try this out or not. Right. And honestly, so, good on you for asking the question. Honestly, I think you should ask the question earlier. You can even ask the question before you even go on a first date, but not necessarily what he wants with you, but what he's looking for in general, Generally what I recommend for my clients is to look at between like a month and 3 months, right? So it sounds like you were somewhere in either 1 month to 2 months. And so, that's fine. Let him pout, let him go off on his own, let him, be upset or whatever. And then if he wants to come back and show that he's actually serious and interested, then he can do that, right? And if he doesn't, then he won't. Just leave him alone. Let him go through his stuff. Because a lot of times what ends up happening is that guys will leave and they will be like, they'll think that you're not serious or whatever. They'll expect you to chase him and go after him and, all that kind of stuff. And if you don't do that, sometimes guys will be like, you know what, she's right to feel that way. And if I want to be with her and I enjoy spending time with her, I've spent 8 dates with this woman. If I've spent that much time with her, maybe, I've developed these feelings for her and I want to be around her. And he might end up coming back and pursuing you and being like, yeah, I will. If he does come back, make sure that you have this conversation before you let him waste any more of your time. Mm-hmm. Right. But he might end up coming back and deciding that he does want something. And if he doesn't, that's totally okay. All he's doing is opening a space for another applicant to come over and, put in his best effort to show you that he's the right guy for you.
I love that job application analogy, and you're kind of like the CEO of your love life. That is brilliant. So I hope that was helpful. And I actually see another question along similar lines to what you were just talking about, Matt. Tristan Marie says, any tips on how women should handle the gray area? As it seems men like the gray area, still trying to figure it out, not sure if we're a match or not. And we tend to get anxious. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah. So, we're kind of talking about this a little bit before. There's a few different things that you want to do here. One is it's okay for guys to be in the gray area initially, right? With the first few dates, the first, couple dates or whatever, it's fine because he doesn't know you yet, right? He can't, like, if he's decided on you already, it's kind of weird because he doesn't even know you yet. And so you can give him some time. My suggestion is that while you're giving him that time, that you don't focus all your attention on him. Open that up. We call it abundance dating. Open it up and allow other men a chance, right? And some other man might come around and he might not be in the gray area, right? But at some point, what you want to do, and like I was just saying, it's somewhere between, 3 weeks and 3 months, somewhere between 3 weeks and 3 months, you want to get a definitive answer on, are we going to do this? Which is basically the, let's be exclusive and be in a relationship conversation, right? Because somewhere in that period of time, he will know, right? Some guys it could even take a little bit longer, but I suggest at 3 months, you just cut him off. If he's still just totally unsure and he just wants to, hang out and see how things go, like just be like, okay, do the same thing that, who was that said that earlier was saying,
the last comment. Yeah. Paola said that.
Yeah. Paola. Yeah. Don't let him waste your time, just, that's why we do abundance dating. And that's why we have certain time frames. At certain time frames, you decide like, hey, we've spent time together. That's what the process of dating is. The dating process isn't, I hang out with guys and I sleep with them and we just see where everything goes. No, the process of dating is I'm looking for the love of my life. That's what I'm looking for. And that's the job application that these guys are filling out and signing up for. And they're all on a trial period, right? And, you have a couple people, we can just call them interns for the time being. You have these interns showing up, and what do? Do they show up? Do they communicate? Do they show up on time? Do they do the work that they are supposed to do? Do they, do they make sure that you're clear with everything and know what's going on? Or are they, showing up late? Are they missing work? Are they hanging out at the water cooler and playing slap and tickle with Susie? What are they doing? Right. And that's what you want to look at. And you're evaluating his behavior. You're communicating what it is that you want, and you're evaluating his behavior so that he has a roadmap to getting to, taking you to the relationship that you want to go to, and you want to make sure that you're on the same page. But it's an evaluation period. That's what dating is. And then after dating comes the relationship. And then a relationship doesn't mean everything's over either, because if you want to get married or something, that takes time to decide, right? It takes about 6 months, right? So if you've been dating, they've done studies on this, and they've figured it out unanimously that at around the 6 to 8 month period, 99% of men know exactly what kind of a relationship they want with you long term. Right? Yes. Whether it's to get married, or whether it's just to stay in a situationship forever, or whether they just want to be, friends with benefits, or whatever it is. He knows by somewhere between the 6 and 8 month mark. And so if you've gone past there and you haven't had conversations about this, doesn't mean he's going to get married to you next week, right? But he sees you in a certain category. And you want to ask him what that is. And if he doesn't want to talk about it, or he wants to be vague, or he wants to be, we call him slippery. He's slippery. He's a slippery guy. You try to grab him. It's like one of those, like tadpoles or, iguanas or something. You like grab him. He's like jumps out of your hand. If he's doing that, he's showing you that he's not really serious. He's showing you that he doesn't want something real. He's showing you that he's wasting your time. Right.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. So certainly don't let this gray area go on and on and on for 6+ months, because that is very true. Men know what they want to do with you. That's where people can be in a situationship with a man for years, literally. And then after they break it off, the guy, meets someone else is engaged to them 6 months later, because they found someone who they really felt it for, who triggered those feelings in them. And so you don't want to let these things go on and on forever. But it's so true. Men know pretty quickly what they want, if they're open to something serious with you or not. So I think that's really important what you said. Great answer to that question. Erica says you probably need to actually tell him what you want specifically. Men like specifics. I think she was talking about a previous question. Yeah, very, very true. Jasmine asks, how do you know what is the right thing to do when you talk to men in general? She says, I usually text less because I have to make sure they are being true and not lying to me. Yeah, I think we've been talking about this. Maybe you're just joining us. It might be helpful to hear the beginning of this live stream after the replay posts. But any kind of general tips on how to talk to a guy to make sure he's like a serious contender or not?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to know like a methodology, you can rewatch this video. But in general, if you're just like, hey, what do I talk to a man about? Right. Just remember that most of the time that you're with somebody is going to be boring. That's just it. Like we talk about like all the fun and exciting things on these podcasts and live streams and stuff like that. We talk about the fun, flirty, exciting. This is what you say. Here's what you do then there, right? But most of the time it's kind of boring, right? Like most of life is kind of boring. And so you want to have time where you're just hanging out and talking to each other, talk about, your lives, talk about what he's interested in, talk about, like emotional topics are really good. Relationship topics are really, really good. Brothers and sisters, family relations, what kind of environment did you grow up in? Like, what do you think of your dad? If you could change anything about what you've done, what would it be? Like any of that kind of stuff around relationships. Are you a mentor to any, younger men out there? Anything like that is really great and juicy stuff. Because a lot of men say that they don't like drama, but they actually do. Like people like drama. Everybody likes drama more than they try to say. What they don't like is like angry fighting back and forth kind of stuff. What they do like is talking about relationships and hearing about different stories on what's going on. And so relationship conversation is a conversation you can talk about a lot. And it's interesting and it's fun. There's a lot of other kind of conversations that you can have, like nostalgia conversations are really good. You can just talk about emotional topics in general, finding out like what he's passionate about, what he likes, what he's into, any of that kind of stuff. Finding commonalities is a fun one, right? Because people like whatever you have in common, you guys can talk about forever. Right. So you find out that he's into sushi, you're into sushi, you guys can talk about sushi for an hour and it's no problem. right? So you want to find things that you're into. We all eat, right? So we have that in common at the very least. What does he eat? What do you eat? What do we all eat? Right? It's an interesting conversation. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be mind blowing. You don't have to, make them fall in love with your food choices, right? All you have to do is just talk to them, right? And inside of all these conversations, you do a little bit of flirting here, you do a little bit of PMI there, you set a boundary here and there, right? You make sure you ask questions about, what he's looking for and all that kind of stuff in there, right? And just, yeah.
Love it. Yeah. For anyone who wants extra help on this too, check out Matt's brand new texting program. It is so inexpensive, like so incredibly inexpensive. We're not saying the price because I know it's going up very soon, but that will be the first link in the description or show notes, depending on where you're listening or watching this. And I love your answer to that one too. So another comment: for women, we have to be clear on our end. What is it that we want and are looking for? Yes, so true. Here's another question. What if you've already been intimate with a guy? You've been on a few dates and then it just turned into physical hookups. Is there a way to see if he's going to start taking the relationship seriously? Great question. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, Matt.
Yeah, what you need to do is stop. Just stop, right? So what the problem that you're going to run in here, Jamara Kit, is that you're getting yourself dug into a hole, right? The time to ask that question is before you even go on the first date with the guy, right? It's not after you're deep in and you're doing physical hookups, right? So what you need to do is change the frame of the relationship. I talk about this in my devotion switch program, but changing the frame of what your interaction is between each other. If right now the interaction is, hey, come on over and let's hook up, the interaction needs to shift over to, at the very least, we meet up and go on a date before we hook up, right? The interaction needs to be, hey, we meet up sometimes and we don't hook up at all, right? That's what people who are dating and in relationships do, right? If you're just doing, hey, we just hang out and do casual hookups, stop doing that, right? Start making it so that he has to show you that he's serious about you and he's interested in dating you and he's interested in being in a relationship with you in order to be with you. I want you to remember this, Jamara Kit. Here's what you want to remember. Remember that you are sacred. You are a divine being of God. You are a goddess, right? You are valuable. You're incredibly valuable. That's what it means to be sacred. If you believed that you were sacred, if you believe that you are a divine being of God and that your time, your energy, your emotion, your body were all sacred, what would a man have to do in order to be worthy of having your time, attention, emotion, and body, right? What would he have to do? My guess is it wouldn't be like, yo, what up? Come on over. I got some chicken, watching something on Netflix, My guess is it wouldn't be that. My guess is that he would have to show you that he's serious about you, that he wants to be with you, that he's willing to invest in you emotionally, mentally, physically, right? Financially, all kinds of different investments, right? He would have to show you that he respects you and that he values you and he prioritizes you and he thinks that you're an awesome, wonderful person. He would have to tell you that he wants a real relationship with you. That's my guess as to, at the very least, what he might have to do. Yeah. And so you need to switch your mindset. You need to switch the way that you're seeing yourself and you're seeing him and you're seeing the interaction. And once you make that switch, it'll be real easy to start saying and figuring out and setting boundaries around and start requiring that he treats you really well and that you have a relationship together. I recommend for everybody watching, do not sleep with guys outside of a relationship. If you want to make sure that you get into something good and that you're treated well and that you're safe and secure and you're protecting yourself, make sure that you're in a relationship before you sleep with a guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Completely agree. Yeah. So important to just start off on the right foot and don't get yourself into a situation like this. But yeah, Matthew's programs are amazing. Like you mentioned, the devotion switch, they're all in the description if you want to check it out. If you're in a situation like this and you want to turn things around. Okay. I see one more question in the chat from Kat. She says, I'm interested in a man who's 15 to 20 years older than me at the same church. I'm 47. How do I convey that I'm open to getting to know or date him? He's much older, but I've been, let's see, she says, interested for a couple years. Any thoughts on this one, Matt? I think this is the last question.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, if you've been interested in them for a couple of years and you keep seeing them and all that kind of stuff, what's happened is that there's some kind of certain precedent that's been set, right? There's a frame, we call it a frame, right? A frame, which is like the meaning around your kind of an interaction that you guys have together, right? And so, you can talk to them about certain things, right? Like certain topics, because there's certain topics that are like friend topics, and there's certain topics that are like dating relationship topics, right? And you want to get out of the friend zone topics and into the dating relationship topics. I actually talk about this and how to do it specifically in that program, that texting program that Helena is talking about, the texts that make him chase, right? I talk specifically about how to get out of the friend zone and into relationship topics in the most effective way in that program. And so I recommend you check that out. Great program. You should go check it out right now while you still can. And so let me give you some ideas on that as well, right? So let's say that you're talking to each other and you're like, hey, how's your day? What's going on? Right? That's friendship stuff, right? That's platonic. We're friends. There's nothing going on between us, right? As soon as you say something like, hey, are you single? Right? That shifts the dynamic of the conversation that you're talking about from we're just talking like buddies and weird acquaintances that, get along, but whatever, to there's something else going on here, right? He doesn't know what it is. You're not telling him yet, but you're asking him if he's single, right? And suddenly he's, you get to get more information on that. And if you want, you could be playful with him. If he's like, oh, why'd you ask me that? You just be like, oh, I've got a friend who might be interested in you. She thinks that you're her type. And so, I just wanted to get the, information from you to find out if you're actually single or not. Right.
When we do this in person, she actually just wrote in another comment, said she doesn't have his phone number. And so we actually did a whole live stream on flirting secrets, our last one. But do these work in person too, Matt?
Oh, I mean, that's what I was talking about, is doing it in person.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So you can do this in person, no problem at all. And so what you're doing is you're just trying to shift the dynamic, right? Like that what we were just talking about, what I was telling you, like doing the thing where you're like, oh, I have a friend who's interested in you. It's something we call a role play, right? It's like this fake story that you created, but it's like kind of fun and intriguing and interesting. Because then he's going to be like, wait, who's this friend of hers? Or is this her? Or, what's going on here, right? And at some point you can reveal that it's actually her and that you're interested, but you wanted to shift the dynamic to a more flirty and interesting conversation that's about relationships instead of it being about, whatever friendship nonsense that you're normally talking about. Does that make sense?
We talked a lot about that in our last live stream. If you want to check it out, it's just the next one right under this, under the live tab on my YouTube channel, or it's on my podcast as well. And actually, I see one more question. Do you have time for one more question, Matt? I don't know if you were planning on being on here this long. She says, I have the opposite problem. I'm very slow to get to know a guy. It's hard to find one my age that is wanting a relationship because they've been divorced in my 40s. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that here's the first thing that I recommend that you do there, my sweet dog of mine. Here's the first thing I recommend that you do is that you shift your mindset, right? Because what you're saying right here is you are saying, it's hard to find one my age that is wanting a relationship because they've been divorced. Right. And so not only are you saying it's hard to do, you're like, it's hard to do, right? Whether that's factual or not, doesn't matter. Right. And then you're giving us evidence, and reasoning behind that, right? So now what you've done is created a belief system in your head, which says, this is hard to do. It's hard to find these guys. Well, I guarantee you that there are women out there that are your age in their 40s who find that it is not hard to find guys that are looking for a relationship, right? And so my suggestion is that the first thing that you do is shift your mindset. Speak something different into the universe. Speak something different into existence for yourself, because what you believe will shade everything that you see in the world. And so if you believe that it's hard to find a guy that's looking for a relationship, you will experience that. And so my suggestion is that you find a better belief, right? What would a better belief be, to have? Could be anything. I'll let you think about that one. Next thing that I suggest you do is I suggest that you open things up a bit, right? This is one of the best and easiest ways to meet more and better guys. The biggest problem that I see that women have, especially when they're on dating apps and stuff like that, is they think they're going to do the smart thing and use the dating app by screening things down and trying to pinpoint the right guy by putting in all these different criteria that he's got to meet, right? Most of which have no bearing on whether he's going to be a good relationship partner with you or not. Mm-hmm. Right? No bearing whatsoever. Right? And so my suggestion is that you get rid of all of those requirements, whatever those are. I don't know you there, my sweet dog of mine, but if I was to just guess, try to figure out what were your requirements, probably involves something about age, income, education level, height, a whole bunch of other superficial things that don't mean anything. Right. And instead, what I suggest you do is open things up to start dating and talking to more guys, giving more guys that maybe you wouldn't normally talk to a chance. Right. You don't have to again, don't go to the extreme here. Sometimes when I say this, they're like, well, I don't want to date some ugly, loser that lives in his mom's basement. I'm not saying that. Okay. What I'm saying is that there are some guys that might be, a year or two out of your age range, mm-hmm. that might be interested in you. It might be a perfect fit for you. There's another coach that's in our industry. Her name's Marnie Batista. And she's married to a guy who's 20 years younger than her. Right. And they've been married for, I think it's 13 years now or something like that. That's different. It's a little bit different, but it's happening more and more and more these days. A lot of women that are over 40, to be specific, 34% of women that are over 40 are now dating guys that are younger than them. And they're finding that there's a lot of good matches there because those guys tend to be more attentive and have more energy and all kinds of other things. And so I'm not saying you should do it. My sweet dog of mine. I'm just saying that you might want to open things up a little bit, see what your requirements are right now. And instead of doing whatever requirements you're currently doing, go back to the beginning of this video, watch what I talked about, and do those things instead.
I have so much to say on all of that. We should probably do a whole nother episode just on that. Yeah, I think people tend to get really specific really quickly, they get ahead of themselves. Whereas you want to just go back to the basics here. How do you want to feel in your ideal relationship and see if a guy is just meeting the basic criteria rather than getting stuck on these superficial kind of things. My husband was definitely outside the range of where I would date, geographically. He was about an hour away. And I think both of us had this moment. We're about to post a podcast episode together over on my podcast on this very topic, how to not get too specific and still date intentionally while being open. And we both had this moment. He specifically, before our first date, was in his garage thinking what am I doing? This is an hour drive. And what are the odds that this is going to be anything at all? And we were married a year later after that first date. And so there are other things too. We didn't work in the same field. We didn't have anything in common, but we're such a good match on those deeper levels. So yeah, we could probably do a whole full live stream on how to actually look for the right things. So she said very true, and everyone else is saying thank you to for their answer to their question. You are so good at this live Q&A. This was so much fun. We didn't know if anyone would be available on Saturday night, kind of a last minute live stream. So yeah, we didn't recap these 5 because there were so many questions that came through, but do you want to do that really quick? And then we can close out here. We're almost to the end of the hour. I can't believe it.
Sure. So what to text a guy? Number 1, don't be afraid to reach out. Sometimes it's not chasing if you're coming from a good place and you're getting reciprocation and he's, responding and taking the ball and running with it. Number 2 is use questions to get him to respond instead of just saying things that aren't worthy of response. Actually ask him some questions, specifically things that he's interested in, because he likes talking about things he's interested in. Number 3, do a video chat. Get on video. Works like magic. Number 4, focus on the meetup. Stop trying to get pen pals that you're texting with for months or years before you meet up, because a lot of those guys are just wasting your time. Number 5 is give him some space to pursue you. Don't smother him. Don't send him novels about your day. Give him some space. Let him come to you and talk to you and build that up, because he can't miss you if you're smothering him. There needs to be some space there.
Yeah, love it. I think that's great. And anything else you want to say about your new program, Texts That Make Him Chase? It is so inexpensive. Everyone click that first link in the description or show notes and check it out while it's still on sale, because the price is going up soon. But I wanted to offer it to my community before that happens. So yeah, anything else you want to say on that?
Yeah. So in the texting stuff, what I talk about is high value texting. How do you come across as a high value woman? How do you flirt with him? And how do you build emotion? How do you connect with him in a really juicy way? You don't have to just use it for text messaging. You can actually use it for in-person, real life stuff. And I recommend that you do. And so, yeah, it's a great program. Check it out. Real inexpensive. And it'll give you some great ideas on how to have some great, interesting conversations that make him desire you and chase you and think you're so interesting and high value and awesome.
I love it. Okay, so again, that is the first link in the show notes. I'll also add it to the comment section on YouTube if I can after we're done streaming live here. This was great. I loved all the participation. Thank you so much for your questions and comments, everyone. Again, this was sort of last minute on a Saturday night. We didn't think anyone would even be available. So we're so grateful to have you all here. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And make sure you're following my podcast. Again, it's called Master Your Magnetism on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's totally free. There are double the episodes on there that are not available here on YouTube or anywhere else. So you definitely want to go check that out. Thanks again, everyone. This was really amazing. And thank you, Matt. I hope we can do this again soon. I'm looking forward to seeing you and your fiance in a few weeks too. Hopefully that's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Thanks everybody for being here. And always remember that you are worth it. Remember that you're valuable.
Love it. So important. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you next time.